Hello, everyone, and welcome to the HockeyScape podcast. My name is Sam Hossack. Today, we have a very special guest jumping on for the revamp of the show, and let's meet him now. You can find this guy on Thursdays and Saturdays as an intermission host on Rogers TV for the Barrie Colts, as well as on the mic for the Pickering Panthers of the Ontario Junior Hockey League. It's an absolute pleasure and honor to welcome to this show a friend of mine, Thomas West.
Hey Sam, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Just came off a pretty wild ride out in Saskatchewan, but we're getting settled back into the real world again.
Absolutely, and we'll get into that a little later. So, first of all, let's get it going into how did you get into the sports media industry?
I'd say it pretty much started off with getting into sport media. At the time, it was Ryerson University, now Toronto Metropolitan University, and when I first got into that program, I was very surprised. Has an extremely low acceptance rate, and I think you got to get a little bit lucky as well to be one of the people that gets selected into that program. Because at the time when I was coming in, I don't think that your grades and things like that were a big thing. So it was mostly your interview that you had when you came into the program and the resume and just any kind of enthusiasm that you could portray about sport media. And I mean, when I applied, I didn't expect to get in at all. And then once I did, I took that opportunity, and it's led to a lot of really cool things. But I'd say that when you come into sport media, you kind of think right away, oh, I want to be the play-by-play guy on Hockey Night in Canada, which I'm no different. That was my inspiration. I guess that would still be a goal that I'm gunning for today. But once you get into the program, you start to learn about what goes on behind the scenes, and all of the things behind Ron McLean on Hockey Night in Canada, and you start to kind of appreciate how valuable those people are when you're putting on any kind of a sport media broadcast. So once I kind of learned about that that aspect of sport media, and got into the industry a little bit that way, you can kind of appreciate how much work goes in, and you're inspired a little bit to become one of those guys too. So that's kind of what got me into sport media.
Now, what was your first job in sports media?
First job in sports media. So jobs in sports media are sometimes kind of hard to define, because when you're first getting into the industry, you don't make a lot of money. It's a lot of volunteering, or you get an honorarium here and there. I guess the first thing I would have done probably would have been with the Pickering Panthers in second year of university. And I mean, I've only been with the Pickering Panthers for 2 seasons. Their play-by-play guy, Alex Bloomfield, sent out an email to our program, and I immediately sent him an email right back saying, hey, I'm super enthusiastic, and luckily they were able to take me, and I kind of switched between doing color commentary, a little bit of play-by-play, doing the highlight packs for the Panthers, and then also operating the camera. So I kind of hop around there, and you'd make a little bit of money doing that as well. So that was probably the first job I got in sport media, and man, it ever led to a lot coming out of that.
For sure. And at what point, when you were kind of growing up, did you kind of realize that maybe you wanted to get into sports media?
I never realized growing up that I'd want to be in sport media. I actually kind of had a probably a bit of a different childhood than what you'd see everyone else have, because I actually didn't watch TV until probably about like grade 7, grade 8, maybe grade 9. I would watch in elementary school. I'd watch the first period of Hockey Night in Canada, and other than that, just because I was in a private school, and it's just what you did in this private school is just it's a different way of education. There was no media or anything like that, so my entire sport media inspiration in my early childhood came from watching one period of Maple Leafs hockey on Hockey Night in Canada, which is kind of ironic, I guess, once you see what I'm doing now. I end up going to university for literally the opposite of that. But there were certainly pros and cons to to that. But I don't think I ever realized that I really wanted to be in sport media until I got into this program, and you really start to learn what all this is all about.
Absolutely. And is there anyone in the sports media world that you kind of look up to as a role model?
Yeah, totally. So many people. I would start with a bunch of people that are have been my professors here in sport media. Uh, Lots of people throughout my education process. If I was to pick one guy though, I'd probably go with maybe Dan Schulman. Big fan of his voice doing Blue Jays baseball. I love baseball. It was one of my sports growing up, and then Jerry Howarth as well, because I didn't watch a ton of TV when I was a kid, but I did listen to a little bit of the radio, and I think I take a lot of inspiration in my on-air career from guys like Dan Schulman and Jerry Howarth.
Absolutely. And for those who don't know, Thomas is also the play-by-play guy for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and no, not the hockey team, the baseball team in the Inter-County Baseball League. And as you mentioned, they're a big baseball fan. So obviously covering hockey and baseball, if you were to choose one sport, which would be your favorite?
They're so different, Sam. I mean, hockey is, you it's you're keeping the energy levels up all the time, and it's almost like a performance whenever you're calling play by play in a hockey game. But baseball, you're sitting back, maybe you're having an ice cream cone, or eating my sub doing the Maple Leafs baseball games. It's a much different vibe. Both take a whole lot of work, but I would probably say hockey. That's what I've been doing the most, but I don't want to put down any of the baseball listeners as well. They're both up there probably equally for me.
Now, if you had to choose, what's your funniest on-air moment that you've had while calling a game?
Well, one immediately jumped into mind when you said that, so I guess I'll go with this one. So it was one of the Pickering Panthers games this year. And thinking about, I don't even know if this is going to be funny without watching the clip. I might have to send you the clip as well. But one of our gamer operations people brought me a cookie while I was calling the game. And I just talked about baseball, where it's like baseball, you can pretty much eat food while you're calling the game. Like you really can. But hockey, it's not like that. There's no breaks in the action. It's always go, go, go all the time. So I'm sitting here with this just delicious looking cookie in my hand. And I'm thinking, like, there's 14 minutes left in the period. Like, I need to find a time to take a bite of this. And so I start talking about it on air, because that's what happens when you're doing commentary. You just start talking about whatever comes into your head. And at this point, it was very much the cookie that was on my mind. So our cameraman, Donald Pickering, sees that I'm just going on and on about this cookie. So he turns the camera over so I can, show that I have the cookie, and I give a shout out to McKenna. She's our game operations person in Pickering for giving me the cookie. And right at the end, I was like, well, I'm not going to eat it though, because I'm on air. And then he turns the camera, and right at the end, you can just see me about to take a bite of the cookie. And that was probably one of my more comical moments. And it seems like not a big deal, Sam, but the dilemma that was going through my mind in that moment on air, I can't tell you how difficult that decision was.
Yeah, that's unreal. Yeah, obviously in baseball, you're able to kind of sit back and relax a little bit because like you've got a longer game than a hockey game. But yeah, there was, especially with what both of us saw, the way our series went. For the fans that don't know, obviously Thomas, play-by-play guy for Pickering. I was a social media coordinator for the Toronto Junior Canadians. We faced each other in the finals, and all out wars. I had said to you in the one game at the start of the series went 7 games. But yeah, as you know, hockey can be back and forth, and anything can happen at any moment. So
yeah, Sam, I feel like we were the only two people in that series that didn't hate each other too. We were like the one link between the two teams that were still friendly.
yeah, exactly. That was unbelievable. Coaches going back and forth, yelling, players yelling at each other. It was insane. I don't know if you mic'd anyone up, or you guys did, but that would have been pretty funny. I know you guys mic'd some guys up during um, regular season warm-ups and stuff, but if there's any content out there, I'm sure the fans would love to see that in the OJ. A lot of people were definitely tuning into that series. Um, Quickly, let's talk about the Ryerson Sport Media Program and what you kind of learned from that and taken from that into what you do now.
Well, the first thing I would say about being in sport media is that it is easy. It is not a hard program. What makes it hard is what you put into it. If you go through your entire career at sport media and, just float along, do the assignments, really, it's not that much work that you really have to do, but it's what you put in that determines how much you're going to get out of it. If you work really hard in sport media and do all of the extra things that you possibly can, then you're going to come out of it with, first of all, a really good experience. And second of all, probably an opportunity to get a job that not makes a whole bunch of money, but is something that you really like to do. So it's what you put into it that really determines what you get out of it. And anyone who doesn't put a whole lot into being in a program like this, where there's, they don't accept a ton of people, there's only 70 people in my program, it's honestly a privilege to be in the program. So for anyone who's watching that's getting into the sport media program, you got to work hard. You just do it, even though it, you got to be your own motivator sometimes, because there isn't a ton of work to do. That's really important being in sport media. So I learned a lot in sport media because I'd like to think that I did put a lot of work into the things I do. I did a whole bunch of projects, that weren't necessarily in the rubric that they give you in class. Every assignment, you can put 50% into it and, get a passing grade, but you really got to strive to not only do something that gets you a good mark, but also gives you a great experience and that you learn something from as well. So I learned a ton about the sport media industry from, traveling around. I think back to one trip where we had to do a 30-minute show, and I ended up traveling from Napanee back to Richmond Hill and then to North Bay to shoot like a 2-minute feature that was going to be part of that show. And it was an unbelievable experience. It was with this guy, Zach Shankar. He used to play in the OHL for the North Bay Battalion. So we took the trek back to his hometown in Napanee, Ontario, and then that's right down by the Kingston area, and traveled all the way back up to North Bay and went and watched the North Bay Battalion there. We got some tickets to watch the game, and that's where I was introduced to the OHL. Honestly, I'd never been to an OHL game before second year of university, and I saw how cool that is. And I do stuff in the OHL now, and I probably credit that as, being one of the things that got me into it. But we traveled over 1,000 kilometers in distance for like 2 to 5 minutes of this 30-minute show that we had to do. And it was like a live show airing once on air. And it wasn't actually airing anywhere because it was just an assignment. So that's kind of how you become successful in sport media. You do things like that. And you know what? It was a lot of work, but I'm not complaining at all. Like, nobody on that project didn't have an absolutely amazing time doing it. So that's kind of the way you learn in sport media, and you can kind of tell, like, you learn things from just getting experiences that you create in the program.
For sure, and we'll jump right into the Barry Colts thing now. How did that opportunity kind of arise for you to be the intermission host on Rogers TV?
So, okay, I gotta map this back. So it started out where I decided to do pre-recorded play-by-play of baseball. I'd already done baseball play-by-play because I did some with the Ryerson Rams baseball team. And I did pre-recorded play-by-play on a feature that we did about one of the guys on the Ryerson baseball team, which we met up on him with just doing a side project that we wanted to do back in first year. And the head of our program happened to be the guy that was grading that feature, saw that I did play-by-play on baseball, heard that someone else was looking for a play-by-play guy, got connected to him, and then he connected me to Gene Pereira, who you would know, I guess, from doing stuff with the Barrie Colts. And Gene Pereira was the guy that helped out with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And Gene has, I mean, he's been absolutely incredible in my sport media career so far. And, you know, from doing stuff with the Barrie Colts to, you know, helping me out with the Toronto Maple Leafs baseball. But at the time, Gene was with Toronto Maple Leafs baseball. And I walked in and met Gene for the first time. And immediately, without even hearing me do any kind of play-by-play or anything, Gene was like, or Mike Poirier was actually there as well on that first day. I think you did some color commentary with him in Barrie, and they said, oh, hey, well, you know, we're looking for a intermission host for the Barrie Colts. And I was like, sure, yeah, put my name in the ring. Like, there's no way that this is actually ever gonna pan out. And you know, mid-season, after the season had ended, Gene contacted me and got me in touch with Josh Kofta, who's the producer at Rogers TV. And eventually I showed up in Barrie for my first broadcast, which I showed up 5 minutes before I had to be on air, which that was probably the scariest situation of my entire life. But it was all uphill from there, I swear.
Absolutely, yeah. Gene is an amazing guy. So is Mike Poirier. A couple months ago, for those that don't know, I got the chance to do color commentary for a game for the Colts, and just an unbelievable experience having yourself and Mike there. It was great, and I can't thank Gene enough for giving me that opportunity, reaching out that day and asking me if I wanted to do it, and it was just an unbelievable experience, and can't thank each of you enough for doing that. So now, funniest on-air moment of doing it for the Colts, if you can think of one.
Funniest, got it. Okay. So I don't even know if this one could be on air. It's a little bit of potty language, but it was me and Mike. I was doing color commentary. It was a North Bay Battalion game, and as you know, I do the intermission hosting, and Gene wasn't there that day. Big shoes to fill. I don't even know how I was able to do that, but I came in, did color commentary, but we also didn't have an intermission host, so I had to do the intermission hosting and the color commentary, which was no problem. It was, you know, it's after I've been doing it for a while. It was honestly second nature at that point. And, you know, if you know the game of hockey, you can do some color commentary, and especially when you know the teams, which I knew the North Bay Battalion and the Barrie Colts really well, because I used to follow the North Bay Battalion before I did the Barrie Colts games, as I was talking about before. And no problem at all. But we got to an overtime and then a shootout. And the big thing about doing the intermission hosting and the color commentary is that for the entire 2 hours and 30 minutes or whatever, you never have any time off. Like there's never a moment to just kind of, you know, breathe or, you know, kind of collect yourself. Or in my case, the biggest problem, there's never any time to go to the washroom. That was the really big problem. So we got to the shootout. I really, really had to go to the washroom. Like Sam, I literally had to go to the washroom so bad. We got to the shootout, finished doing color commentary, waited like 5 seconds, and we have 2-minute commercial breaks in Barrie. And Ethan Cardwell gets the shootout winner, and then I got to go do the post-game show. So I go on to Josh, and I was like, Josh, I really got to the washroom. Like, do I have time? He's like, yeah, sure. You have 1 minute and 15 seconds. Well, I'm all the way up at the very top in the broadcast booth. And the only way to get down is to go all the way through the concourse, then go, you know, into the concourse washrooms and then try and get back. So I was like, at that moment, you have to make a decision in your head. Do I go through this one more segment? But like, I was hunched over. Like, I had to go so bad. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go for it. So I ran down the stairs, made it all the way down, and then ran all the way back up. And I haven't been an athlete in a while, so I was really, really out of breath. And then I get the 10 count, 10, 9, 8. I'm like, like I can barely breathe. I'm so puffed out from running up the stairs in my dress shoes, but I do feel a lot better. I will say that. And I run all the way up the stairs and I get back and I start getting the 10 count. Okay. Welcome back to Barrie Colts Hockey on Rogers TV. My name's Thomas West. And then, oh man, I was out of breath for that entire segment. I literally had to take like 2-second breaks where I just like stopped talking, just like, take the mic away. Yeah, so Ethan Cardwell gets the shootout winner. And oh my, that was so difficult to do. I was feeling so lightheaded because I was so out of breath and I'm trying to not show it while being on air, but I'm like getting to the end of my sentences and like you could tell like I'm like just about out of breath. So I wasn't on camera during the time, so I don't know what if people thought that something bad was going on, but I was all right. I just really had to go to the washroom and sprinted up the stairs. That would probably be the silliest and funniest moment that happened for me in Barrie this year.
For sure. And during that game, when I was on doing color commentary, there was another moment, and you weren't in the arena this day.
Nope.
You were at home doing it.
I was on Zoom, yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to play the clip here because my buddy sent this to me after the game, and I have found, like, this has been the funniest thing I have heard in, like, it's happened to me, honestly. So here's the clip of, we're coming back, I think, to start the third period, and here's your intro.
Intermission coverage here from Barrie, and well, it's been a good start for the Barrie Colts as we bring in Ham Hosak and Mike Poirier, and
just completely butchers my name on Rogers TV.
Ham's so hacked.
That was the funniest thing I've probably ever heard or had happen to me, and honestly, buddy, it was awesome. Like,
okay. I can give you the behind the scenes on that too, because it was when you first came in and like I was on Zoom, right? So things got broken up. So I guess like whenever I was like, because I didn't know who the hell you were when it first came on air, they were like, oh yeah, we found this one guy from Barrie. Good. I guess I don't feel as bad now. So they find you come in and I guess I missed the intros of who everyone's name was. So we were chatting beforehand, but I didn't know who your name is. We were going back and forth about the junior Canadians and the Pickering Panthers and whatnot, but I never knew who your name was. And then over Zoom, I didn't really have intercom because my mic was always live. So I basically just had to either hope the audio room had me muted, which they always did. They did go with that. Or my intercom was I had to like type in the chat. So I was trying to type in like I forgot like who's like with Mike, like I forgot this guy's name, and then I think I just got it like last minute, but hadn't really like processed in my brain yet. So there you go, Ham.
Yeah, that was awesome. Because I didn't hear it, like it would have come through the headset, and I'm like, honestly, like it was my first time doing color commentary, so it was kind of throwing me off for the first little bit because like every time, as you would know, you talk and it comes back through your ear like 2 seconds later, so I'm hearing like what I'm saying, and then like I'm like trying to process like what I'm about to say, and then you come in with that intro, and then like I think like right after Mike threw it to me and I was saying something about Todd Miller or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was honestly unbelievable having that. Like, and then,
that's a great clip. I actually didn't find that. That's a great clip.
I think in the like clip, it might have actually been we went right to like that intermission segment. I'm pretty sure, and yeah, we did. We went right to the intermission segment, and it has our names right below us. So like it shows people can hear you absolutely butcher my name, and it just has my name on the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, that does make it good. But that would have helped me on Zoom too. But I don't have that program feed.
Yeah, so that was just one thing that like it was definitely something that like I had a good chuckle at when my buddies were sending it to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's unbelievable.
That's great. That's great.
So we'll get right into things here now with Pickering. You talked a little bit about how kind of the opportunity started for you. So let's talk about, first of all, here the overagers. There was 9 of them this year for the Pickering Panthers. What can you say about those guys and what they did to help build that championship run they went on?
Yeah, so 9 overagers as of the final. We added our last one. That was an AP and Ethan Doyle came over from the Caledonia Corvairs, and he was instrumental in the playoff run, comes to the Centennial Cup and everything like that. But I think it can be hard sometimes for OAs, because a lot of OAs in the OJHL are coming from playing major junior, and now they're playing junior A. And I mean, you know the rules in the OJHL where you can only have 3 overagers. So even if you are a player that's good enough to be on an OHL team in the OHL, but you're 20 years old, there's a really, really good chance you're not going to make that team just because you're only allowed to have 3 OAs. So you don't want to have more than that. So, I mean, I can definitely see a situation how you could be discouraged coming back from, major junior. Now you're playing junior A. There isn't thousands of fans coming out to watch you anymore. You're not flipping pucks over the glass and signing people's autographs. Oh, well, they do that a little bit, but it's not the same, right? It really isn't the same. But with the group of OAs that we have, and this might have been a little bit with Coach Pearson being able to just bring this team together and get them to buy in to what we were doing. These guys cared a lot. They cared a lot. And you might not realize that during the season, especially because you don't get to know them as well. But after going to the Centennial Cup and being in the locker room after the Pickering Panthers, the wins, everyone's excited. But I think where you really see it is the losses, and being in that locker room after the Pickering Panthers battled their hearts out against the Brooks Bandits. And you see how much that these guys really did care. There were a lot of tears shed in that locker room, and they were all just, guys knowing that it was over, but like their careers were over, but you could tell that it was just this team, right? Like they really wanted to bring that team to the pinnacle of junior hockey. And seeing the emotions on their faces, and even the emotions, the good and the bad, throughout the entire run at the Centennial Cup, you learn how much the Pickering Panthers actually did mean to those 20-year-old players. And that's something that I was really, really impressed with. And Coach Pearson said in the locker room after as well, like it's not over for the majority of those guys, right? You go play university hockey. That's an incredible experience for a lot of those OA guys. Some of them have aspirations to go out to the East Coast League, or, maybe even the AHL at some point in their career. So it's really not over. And if you have an attitude like we saw those players have this year, and you care about the team that you're playing for so much, I think a lot of those players are going to go far.
Absolutely, and we'll get right into the OJHL Championship Series here. Obviously, facing each other. Let's break down this series. So games 1 and 2, JRC takes those, and just talk about going into. Let's go to game 4 actually. It being back in Pickering. Talk about walking into that rink. What was the atmosphere there? And that was on Mother's Day actually. So talk about having a big crowd there for you guys in that game.
Yeah, that was a crazy game. Honestly, the whole series was crazy. There was, swings and momentum. It looked like the junior Canadians were honestly going to run away with things right at the beginning of that series. Pickering Panthers had themselves all out of sorts, and there was a lot of talk in the locker room after that game too about how they were going to play the rest of this series, and really trying to reset the team and get them to buy into what Coach Pearson was going to try and do for the rest of the series. And after game 2 and they lost, that was a real turning point, and they had a lot of motivation coming into game 3 and game 4 to not dig themselves too big a hole in this series. They weren't extremely worried about being down 2-0, but being down 3-0 was something that really, really worried them. And, it was great having those final series in Pickering. We didn't get a ton of fans in the regular season, but, you started to see some of those local Pickering residents coming out and cheering on the Pickering Panthers, and we got our super fan Captain Oshawa that was there and making it loud. So it was really a special experience being able to see the Pickering locals and the Pickering Panthers do something really cool for their community.
Now, talk about Game 5, the momentum swing that happened in that game there, it being a 2-2 series and the way things went down there.
Yeah, so Game 5 was the one that JRC won, right?
Pickering 2-1 in overtime.
Oh, that was Game 5. Yeah. Oh yeah, that was a nuts game. That was the one in JRC, right? Yeah. So yeah, there was talk about momentum swings in that game. There were some crazy saves, 1-1 throughout the entire game, ends up going to double overtime. And the Pickering Panthers, I think the biggest moment in that game was there was a moment where for about 10 seconds they thought they'd won the game because Dustin Hutton turned around and put one into the net, and everyone was cheering, but no one had realized that the referee had blown off the goal for the net being off before it went in. And Dustin Hutton went flying out to center ice with this big celebration. People were coming off the bench, and then they turned around and realized, oh no, it's double overtime. We just celebrated like we won the game, and now we got to keep playing hockey. Like, imagine being in the mindset of one of those players. You think you've won, you're taking it to an elimination game, and then you end up, man, that's going to really be a heartbreaker if you lose that game. And who else but the same guy who got the goal called off, Dustin Hutton, who's the guy to bring it the other way and put it in this time in double OT. Especially, it was the first overtime that the goal got called off, if I remember correctly. Then you go to the locker room, you talk about it, right? And then you come back out for the second overtime, and I mean, you got to have some kind of a mental reset after that happens. And Pickering Panthers were, and it's amazing that it was Dustin Hutton, the guy who was able to get the goal, because man, he would have been kicking himself so hard if the Pickering Panthers don't end up losing it. And it's a goal that he thought should have been in, and the whole team celebrated like it was in. So I mean, I guess that was a momentum swing in that series, but I think JRC ended up coming back and winning the next game.
Yeah, so Game 5 double overtime, and then Game 6 double overtime in Pickering.
Mm-hmm.
For the fans that didn't follow the series, it was Games 1 and 2 were, I'd say, in our hands in JRC, and then Pickering was definitely Game 4 with the shutout just all over us. And Game 3, 3-goal lead for JRC, and then Pickering came back winning 5-4. So the momentum swing kind of started there, and then, but for the fans that didn't watch this series, the amount of craziness that happened the last 3 games in this finals, I don't think will ever probably happen in the OJHL ever again. Having a Game 5 going to double overtime after having a goal called back, and having all the controversy that happened in Game 5, and then going into Pickering Game 6, season on the line for a team in the championship series, to go into double overtime and then force a Game 7 at home. Yeah, the fans that didn't see this series, Hockey TV has all the games, and just honestly, if you have 5 or 6 hours or however long it would take to watch those 3 games, go back and watch them. But honestly, that we'll talk about it now. Game 7, Scotiabank Pond, 800 plus people. How was that atmosphere in the crowd there?
Yeah, that was nuts. And if we can just quickly backtrack to Game 5 as well, that double overtime game, that was pretty crazy as well, because you remember that the Selby Warren pad stack save in double overtime as well, the Ian Martin going bar down but not in double overtime. There was 2 moments where Shelby Warren made an incredible save and Ian Martin rung it off the crossbar, and there was 2 moments there where the Pickering Panthers also thought they had won the Buckland Cup. So coming into this game, this was again I mean, again, they'd be kicking themselves if they end up winning this, because they were this close, literally this close from winning it all. And if it hadn't been for an incredible goaltending performance and a little bit of luck off the iron, that could have been over in Pickering. Yeah, and then coming in, it was packed there in Scotiabank Pond. It really was. And once again, you get the community coming out and watching the games, which anywhere is really awesome to see. And why not have this game be tied going into the final minute of play? And it's Ryan Johnstone, who actually just re-signed with the Pickering Panthers. We thought maybe he went fourth overall in the U18 draft recently, and then immediately after ends up scoring, in his words, what was the biggest goal of his life, which I don't know if he'll ever score a bigger goal, really. I mean, it was insane. I hadn't even asked Ryan Johnstone, and obviously this happened with like 30 seconds to go in the game, but I talked to Ryan Johnstone right after the game, and I hadn't even asked him a question yet. I hadn't even said hello. And he just came up and said, "That's the biggest goal I'm ever going to score in my life." And we're talking about a guy who didn't even play with the Pickering Panthers in the regular season. He was out with the Ajax Pickering Raiders, battling it out with his U18 squad over there. And then he came here to the Pickering Panthers mid playoffs and ended up just being an instrumental part of this team, and a guy who plays with a lot of class as well. He was always the guy that sat behind me on the bus trips at the Centennial Cup. And he's a pleasure to talk to, and he's a really, really well-rounded young man. And for him to end up scoring that big goal for the Pickering Panthers, couldn't have really thought of anyone better, honestly, to get it. He deserved it. And it meant so much to that Pickering Panthers team. Guys who have been there for a long time. We talked to Matthew Altamar, who's the longest serving Pickering Panther. And, he was really the heart of the Pickering foundation of that team, because he'd been with the team so long. And we talked to him on a podcast the whole year. And he came out right away and he said, "I want to put Pickering on the map." And you win the Buckland Cup, you take your team, halfway across the country to Estevan, Saskatchewan. That's pretty good for being able to put your community on the map. And I mean, imagine being a guy that's, grown up playing for the Ajax Pickering Raider. He sees a guy who's literally wanted to do something great for his community for a really, really long time. And as he said, put Pickering on the map. And that meant just so much to him, just because of, the amount of time that he'd been with the Pickering Panthers. And, there's a whole bunch of guys as well that, had their roots in Pickering. And I think that's what they really thought back to after winning that championship. And it meant a ton to that team.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can't ask for anything better. Game 7, last minute goal. Chances of that happening, honestly, in any series, any league, are very slim. But yeah, Pickering taking the OJ this year and then getting the Centennial Cup, representing the OJ so well. They did definitely a great job. And then to make it to the national championship nonetheless. A lot of people, I don't think, could have believed that maybe at the start of Centennial Cup.
No.
But with all the great talent that was out there, and having a goal called back with 10 minutes to go in the third period of a game 7, and you can probably attest this, the momentum swung right after that. And
yep.
It was the craziest last 10 minutes of a game 7 ever. I want to thank the OJ for all they did, Nutra Farms for all they did for the championship series. I know they had that barbecue before game 4, and to have a series go 7 games in any league is spectacular. And having us in JRC and you and Pickering, the two best teams in the OJ, you can't ask for anything better for a championship series. I know the last time there was actually a Buckland Cup, it was a sweep, and before that it was 6 games. So, I mean, to have a game 7, it really put the OJ, I think, on the map. And I know a lot of highlights from that series. might be a little controversial, some of them, but they definitely put the OJ out there, and a lot of people were noticing it, and I'm sure you can attest that too with um, the amount of people that were showing up in Pickering. I think 400 or 500 every game, and in JRC we were getting around 200-300 for the first couple games. I mean, it was kind of hard with the Leafs playing in the first round during that entire time. Um, for those who don't know, games 1 to 5 of our series were the same nights as games 1 to 5 of the Leafs series. So the crowds weren't that good for our series, but I mean, as you kind of mentioned, it was the same for us in Jersey. The crowds weren't as good during the regular season. So hopefully that can change next year. But yeah, the OJ did an amazing job in this short amount of time as well to kind of get the OJHL Championship Series all planned out. Um, you guys finished up, I think, on the Tuesday before the series started, because we started on the Monday, I believe, and we were playing Coburg at the time, and we finished up on the Friday, so a couple days rest and then get going again. But the OJ did an amazing job getting all the signage up and everything put together for the teams in about 2 days' time. And yeah, they did an amazing job. But we'll get right into Centennial Cup here now. Just talk about flying out of Pearson. And the reason I'm asking this is because I'm sure you've seen this, but Ryan Whitney had quite the experience at Pearson Airport the other day. So I'm sure you didn't have that kind of experience, but just talk about flying out of Pearson.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. There's not a lot of times, and I mean, I think it's the same thing for these players. As a broadcaster, it's crazy to have the privilege to follow this team on this journey and be around with them. I mean, it's an experience of a lifetime, and I knew it was going to be coming into it, whatever we did. There's not a lot of times where you fly out to another place and it's, not somewhere you're going on vacation. It's somewhere where you're meant to be, and you have, some purpose going there. So, those are kind of the thoughts that were going through my head as we were departing. And then as soon as we got to Pearson Airport, I had the camera out and I was doing the documentary series that we were doing for the Panthers, which had its pros and cons. There wasn't a whole ton of free time there, but I'll be honest, there wasn't a whole lot to do in Estevan, Saskatchewan either. But it was really cool, and you knew it was going to be cool right away as the Panthers stepped on the bus. There was just some kind of a buzz that you knew something special was going to happen. And it was awesome to be able to document that and just, be able to get that close to a team that's, had such an incredible run.
All right, welcome back to the HockeyScape podcast. Sorry about some technical difficulties we had there, but Thomas, how's it going again?
It's still going good, Sam.
Awesome. So as we were talking about there, national championship, let's go through that again. Obviously, the Brooks Bandits taking it 4-1. Talk about that day and how the day kind of went for the team from the start of waking up to the end of the night.
Well, it felt like that day went on for about 4 days, because we had a couple off days and then we had 3 games in a row, all do or die games. The players leaving it all out there on the ice every single time, but somehow still had something to give the next day. And when we lost 9-1 to Brooks in the preliminary round, which, go look into the score sheet on that game, there were like 61 penalty minutes for the Pickering Panthers. It was more than just the goals that were a problem for that team that game. That was the moment where we no longer were able to become first place in our group, which meant that the only way to get to the national championship was you were going to have to play 3 games in 3 days. And that's what the Pickering Panthers did. The Brooks Bandit had 2 games, but their games were a little easier. They played the school from Quebec, won 11-2 coming into that game. So their top guys weren't even really playing in the third period. So they were, although playing 2 days or playing the day before, Brooks Bandits were pretty well rested coming into this game after coming off a laugher the time before. The Pickering Panthers, different story. It was a hard-fought battle in game one. Then they come up against the Flin Flon Bombers, and it goes to double overtime with them. Didn't have a great start to the game, and then we had to really, really battle late in that game. And then Cale Cavalin ended up getting the game winner for us, and that was really cool. After that Flin Flon game, that was Cale's first goal with the Pickering Panthers after he was acquired at the trade deadline. So he's not, a guy who scores a ton of goals from us, but man, did he ever deserve it? Because he was a hardworking player, and Cale got the shout out from Ron McLean on Hockey Night in Canada and everything like that after that game. So that was really cool, and it was cool to see the team's reaction to that. But through all that excitement and adrenaline, the Pickering Panthers had played 8 periods of hockey in the last 2 days, and the next day we had to go up against the toughest game that the Panthers were going to play for really the entire season. The Brooks Bandits were the number one ranked team for the entire year, and rightfully so. They were a powerhouse. There was no other team in any junior A league around Canada that really was any competition for the Brooks Bandits, but the Pickering Panthers, they were going to try. But this was a team that really, you can imagine how little legs this team was going to have going to this game with 8 periods of hockey in the last 2 games. And it's not like these were just, preliminary round games. These were hard games. They needed to play their hearts out to try and get to the next round. And there was a real turning point when the team was out for dinner the night before the game against the Brooks Bandits. And the team was tired, like really, really, really tired that night. And Coach Pearson stood up and he said, I don't think we're going to be able to play the Brooks Bandits just, playing the same hockey game that we've been playing the whole time. So he said, if Coach Rico Sirizotti and myself do something a little bit different than what we've been doing the entire year, which is crazy. You get to the national championship and you're going to start changing it up. That doesn't happen ever, but everyone knew that it was going to be necessary. So he stood up and said, if we do things differently than what we've been doing the entire year, is everyone going to buy in? And everyone nodded their head and said, yeah, we'll buy in, Coach Pearson. We're going to follow whatever kind of leadership you have to try and get us a win in this game. And the strategy that Coach, and the other thing he said too, is that they had just seen the team from Quebec just completely roll over and die the game before, right? The team from Quebec was just happy to be there, right? They got to a game playing the Brooks Bandits, an elimination game. They made it into the elimination round, and they were just happy to be there. And it felt like there was a little bit of a sense of that starting to start with the Pickering Panthers as well. So that was the thing that Coach Pearson nipped in the butt right away. It was like, we're not here, just to be happy to be here. Although the team was quite grateful to be there in Estevan competing for a national championship. It's something you'll remember for your entire life. But you can't think that way coming into the finals. And it really, like, you're looking at the Brooks Bandits. This is just this David and Goliath situation. Like, you're looking up at this team and it's, it seems impossible to beat them. So the strategy that Coach Pearson laid out that was going to be a little different is that they were going to play defensive hockey, and there was absolutely no chance that the Brooks Bandits were going to get an odd man rush going the other way. And that meant that the team would just have to fold into that 5-man box in front of goalie Zach Roy, who was also going to have to play really, really well. And they were going to fold up in that box and just block everything that came at them, just put their bodies on the line on every single shot. And they did that through the whole game. And the strategy, it worked. It really did. I mean, we had like 5 shots on goal in the first two periods, but we were leading 1-0. Ethan Doyle was able to bang one in on a rebound. That's probably exactly how the coaches drew it up. And so we tried to win the game 1-0. And, there's a certain point in that game where, you're tired and it's hard to just keep that defensive formation the entire time. And at the first sign that the Pickering Panthers had a tiny little chink in the armor, that's where the Brooks Bandits scored. And then they got another one like 10 seconds later on a breakaway. And that seemed like it was pretty much it there. They kept in that defensive style, but it's hard to come back from something like that. And the Panthers were 20 minutes away from winning a national championship, and they would have had to do that in really remarkable style to do it. And the plan worked. They honestly did the most they possibly could.
Absolutely. Well, Thomas, on behalf of the listeners and myself, thank you for hopping on here today. It was an honor chatting hockey with you, and I'll definitely see you around the rinks next year, buddy.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Looking forward to it.